In any case, I wanted to deal here with some objections. Because yesterday I was a little disappointed in that nobody gave any objections. Too friendly of a crowd. I was really hoping, I was very happy about the so many people coming. I didn't expect that. But I also thought there'd be one or two hecklers in the crowd that would come and make their attacks and make it a little more interesting. But they didn't come. Maybe you scared them off. I don't know. But the hecklers didn't come. But in any case, one thing like Mr. Taylor was saying, and I'm going to say this here now. There's no praise intended. But if you look at this particular event. Basically, Sir Taylor put it all together more or less by himself. And what's happening is that people are coming together. It takes a catalyst, so to speak, to pull people together. And that's a layman operating. Now, obviously, when a priest does something, it's going to pull more people together. And if the bishop does something, it's going to pull more people together. And if a pope does something, it's going to pull many more people together. In fact, it would cause the conversion of Russia and the conversion of the world. But the fact remains that if the Pope's not working, the bishop doesn't have an excuse for not working. And if the bishop isn't working, the priest doesn't have an excuse for not working. And if the priest isn't working, the faithful don't have an excuse for not working. So that each one, we do have to pull together practical steps. Because you look at the course of this last year, what has made it possible, what has made it necessary for there to be a constant reminding. For Bishop Pfeiffer to tell us every week, for instance, I haven't changed, I'm the same as I always was. Why does he have to say that every week? Because there are voices telling him that he has changed. And there are voices, living voices, saying, this is not right what's going on. And we're taking steps because we recognize that in order to save our souls, we have to have an incarnational truth. Truth is not in a book. It must be incarnational. It has to be in a living voice. It has to be in living sacraments. It has to be in living the confessional and so on. The truth of faith is incarnational. And so therefore that's why faithful have called all around the world for the few of us priests to go and visit them. Other priests also asking for support and so on. And so we are trying to support them. We're trying to help them to do the preaching of the truth and living by the truth. It's incarnational, our church. We've got to recognize that our church is incarnational and that we can't spread the faith by only spreading literature. Even though we must spread literature. It's one of the things that we have to do. But it's by real people doing real things that we spread the truth. This is one of those things. That's why I was trying to get from Mr. Taylor the report of an enemy territory. Because today we must recognize the practical side of this event today. Bishop Pfeiffer is on one side of town, SSPX bishop, with SSPX priests. And on the other side of town, there's two SSPX priests on the other side of town. Similar to what happened on a much smaller scale in Korea. When I was in Korea, there are 50 faithful in Korea, 55 faithful, plus or minus in Korea, of the whole of society. And through the warning of Father Couture, they went in. The chapel is owned by a lady who supports us. And he told her, don't allow Father Giselle to say Mass, the normal routine. He said, I'm going to allow Father Giselle to say Mass. And then Father Giselle said, well, Father Pfeiffer is my superior, ask him what you should do. So she called me from Korea and said, what should we do? Should I allow Father Couture to say Mass? And I said, of course, let him say Mass. He's been saying Mass there. Let him continue to say Mass there. So Father Couture came in and said Mass, and Father Ornota. So at one point we had 52 faithful and 4 priests. 4 priests. It ended up being that way. And so, but what happened is Father says, no, I'm going to, he broke into the chapel. They took a hammer, they broke into the chapel, they pulled out all the vestments and they ripped out all the things that they could so that Father Giselle and I would not be able to use them for Mass. Now they told them, you shouldn't do that. And of course when they did that, of course that made Dr. Kim, now she knows which side she's going to definitely stay on. So, but there was no reason for them to do something like that, but that's what they did. And so we came into the chapel with the door smashed open, and they've kind of repaired it, but the damage is still there. And we have our maskets who were able to set up for the Mass, and they were able to save a few things for the Mass. So we said the Mass. And it was interesting, that night when we were there, my first visit to Korea with Father Chazelle, we went there together and said the Mass. About 25, 27 of the people were with us, and about 15, 20 people. We had slightly more on our side than they had on their side. So Father Chazelle, he called up Father Couture. And he said, Father, how about Father Pfeiffer and I, Father Joseph and I, we're inviting you and Father Onoda out to dinner, so we can have an ecumenical gathering in the interest of ecumenism. And so Father Couture said, well, I'm sorry, but I can't go to the ecumenical gathering. And we said, well, why not? Because it's going to be on the internet tomorrow. So he wouldn't come. And so we didn't have our ecumenical gathering. But basically what happened is that we had one priest on the one side of town, another priest on the other side of town, and they were fighting. Now this is an unfortunate thing. We don't want to be in that kind of situation. But here we are again today. But why are we here? And it could summarize it the way Bishop Williamson spoke with Cardinal Hoyos. He said to Cardinal Hoyos, it says, your peanuts are tasty, your drink is drinkable, it's really nice being with you, but we're two different religions. Two different religions. That's what Bishop Williamson told Cardinal Hoyos in the meeting of the three bishops with Cardinal Hoyos at the dinner. Your peanuts are tasty. I guess Bishop Williamson likes peanuts. And your drinks are drinkable. And although I always taught as a child that was not an English word. I always thought you had to say potable. But nobody says that anymore, do they? I was told drinkable is not a word, and I was hit for that. But now I guess it became a word somehow. Bishop Williamson made it into an official word. So they said your drinks are drinkable and your peanuts are tasty, but we're two different religions. And so that's what we're dealing with right now. And just like Father Chazelle said last year in a writing to Bishop Father Couture, he says, look, we are at war. It's true. But why are we at war? Because of differing theologies. If you really and truly believe that your theology is correct, this new theology of the Society of St. Pius X, and you really and truly believe that our theology is incorrect, then you should argue against us with charity, based on truth. We're finding that they're not able to do that. We're finding that, for instance, even the latest attack against the Requisite, filled with lies. Well, what are the lies? What are the lies? A blatant attack against the society. What's the attack? We are attacking specifically the new doctrine of Bishop Fillet, which is written and published. We are attacking specifically the new doctrine contained in dt.org, SSPX.org, and that we discover in the practice and teaching of the priests in the various parishes. Many other priests still find themselves inside the Society of St. Pius X, such as the vast majority of priests here in England, don't like the new theology and the new direction. But they find themselves in a quandary. When we mentioned the example last night, let's suppose that you're the strongest man in the world and your name is Hercules. And you are going to wait for the deer to pass by, which happens once every couple of years. So just in case you're ready to only pass by for a couple of seconds, you pull the bow and the arrow back. And you wait. And you're strong enough, because you're a really strong guy, to hold that for a year. Now the deer comes by and you let go. What happens? The arrow falls on the ground. Because the bow can't take the pressure of being pulled at its maximum torque for that long. And if it's every 6 months, you let go, the arrow goes to the end of your hand, the feather hits the end of your hand when the arrow falls on the ground. And if you hit it, it might kill a fly. The deer might be grateful because there was a fly at that spot, and you killed the fly. But you're not going to hurt the deer. You can't stay in this position forever. One of two things has to happen. One of them is your muscles give out. That's the most common thing. Your muscles give out. And if your muscles give out, you can no longer, when the time comes, a deer comes by, you're so tired, you can't pull it back. That's the most common problem. The second problem is that you're He-Man, Hercules, and you keep your bow back, and now your weapon loses its power. So one of two things is going to happen. Your muscles will lose their power, or your weapon will lose its power. Both cases create the same result. Inability to fight. Inability to do harm to the enemy. And this is what's happening. One of the priests was speaking to him last week from the islands here, telling me, well, I'm still against what's going on. And I'm still trying to preach against what's going on. And, I'm still preaching against what's going on. I'm still against what's going on. But I said, okay, can you condemn the deal that the Bishop Pfeiffer wants to make with Rome? Oh, no, I can't do that. Okay? We are not battling modernism of Paul VI. He's dead, and he's been judged by God. We're not battling the modernism of Paul VI. We are battling the modernism of Menzingen that is affecting our faithful today. We're battling the modernism that is in the church in 2012, 2013. We're not battling the problem of the monothelites back in the 600s and the 500s. We're battling an error today, and we have to protect our sheep against the error today, and we have to warn the sheep against the error today. He says, well, I try to do that, but I can only do it indirectly. He said, what about those sheep, just like Mr. Taylor mentioned earlier, what about those sheep that don't know you personally, that only see you in the pulpit on Sunday? How can they know that you're against the modernism of Menzingen? Well, they can't. They can't. So what happens over time? We're finding several of these priests, now they just don't want to talk about it anymore. Last year, we were talking about it. We were talking about liberalism and modernism. Oh, it's terrible what Bishop Pfeiffer did last week. But after a while, it's a bit like the abuses. Now when you hear, did you know what happened in my parish? What happened in your parish? The priest was dancing during Mass. Really? Okay, that happens every week. This has happened every week for the last 40 years. I'm tired of hearing it. Right? So when you first hear it, you're shocked and scandalized. When you hear it the 40th time, it's like, oh, is that all he did? He only danced? Wow, pretty good priest. So what happens is we start to change our expectations. This is happening to the priests. Priests are telling me now, well, you saw the reaction, Father Morgan said in his official letter, you saw the retraction, the withdrawal of Bishop Pfeiffer. He didn't withdraw anything. But because it sounds better compared to what he said last month, it's now not that bad. We start to change our comparison. As an example, remember I told you I visited more than 300 priests in the last several years about coming to the Latin Mass. I remember one time I visited like 8 or 10 priests in the same day. And it was a bad day. They were like, they didn't believe in God. They were horrible, They were just terrific. Finally I got the 5th, 6th, or 7th priest. We did a lot of them one day that time. And I got to the priest and he said, I really, I tell you, Hi Father, I'm pretty convinced that I think probably that Jesus is probably God. And I thought, this guy's a Catholic. This guy is traditional. He's the most traditional man I ever heard in my life. Why? Because I was thinking of the other 6 priests earlier that day. They were worshiping Satan. So compared to those guys, this guy was good. And so then what happened is, I remember when he said that, I was like, wow, this guy's good. Yeah. Because you no longer are comparing to the truth. You're no longer comparing to the doctrine. You're comparing to the others. Once we start comparing to the others, we're dead. Yeah. And this is happening in the society right now. The priests are telling me about the other liberal priests. And they're so much against the other liberal priests. And they're trying to combat the other liberal priests. What's happening? We're no longer looking at Christ. We're no longer looking at the truth. We're looking by way of comparison. And what's happening? Both things are happening. Arm is getting weaker, and the bow is losing its strength. And we are no longer able to be warriors. That's why it's so important. One reason why, that we're flying around a lot during the course of this last year is because there's a limited time. Humanly speaking, God can convert anyone at any time. But there is a limited time in which you can hold that arm back on that bow. And that limited time is coming to an end. And that's why I think it's so important to establish a resistance chapel here. The limited time is coming to an end. We have to do something. Now I wanted to go through some of the It means establish a chapel, you come and meet. I'm going to meet with the priest tomorrow. And firmly trying to encourage him to come over here and say the Mass. I want to tell him about how things went. And say, look, Father, you stand firm with the tradition. And you know, there's going to be other priests, I think, that will join you. We'll find a way to put them together. And his heart and mind are 100% with us, or more than that. At least I'm in a low 100% will be a low number. And but it's just that the practical side is always terrifying. And I say, look, yeah, Father can live in poverty and all that, but I say, look, you got to travel. Look at the travel expenses. I say, look, no, it's possible. You can take a train over to London. You can fly over to Glasgow, fly over to Dublin. There's several ways to do it. Taking a combination of trains and planes and to the various places, and that we can come once in a month, come twice in a month, and you'll still be able to support people in Europe. A small group that's there, but it will grow. It will grow. It'll grow. And then we'll be able to go from place to place, and we'll be able to survive. So I'd say you put together some funds. Like I would recommend that when you have your Mass there, or your prayers on Sunday, those that are able to come, and I know that it's a process. You know, we're like Mr. Taylor was telling me earlier, you know, it's not very hard to join our club. There aren't too many rituals of entry. It's not that hard, not that many requirements. You just kind of come in and you're like, oh, you're here? Okay, you're with us. Okay, and so it's not that hard. So nonetheless, you just come in, and then you can give a little support. And then they'll set up some kind of small fund, and then be able to support the priest, to be able to take the train over, fly over, come and say the Mass, and then the priest, I think, will come in time. And then you've got to put pressure on Bishop Williamson, because Bishop Williamson wants to rest here. Thou shalt not allow him to rest. Because remember that, he thinks he's an old man. He's forgetting that I was raised around old men. He's not an old man. We have Father Xavier Ignatius in India, who's 93 years old. And he can run circles around Bishop Williamson. And he does. He goes all over the place. He jumps on the top of he travels on the train. As an example, Father Xavier Ignatius told me an example just last year, or a couple of years ago. And at that time he was only 88. And he said, some man said, excuse me, sir, or Father, would you mind taking the top bunk? On the trains you got the bottom bunk, middle bunk, and top bunk. In our Indian trains, if you go on the sleeping class. And so a night train. And said, you take the top bunk, because my dad, he's 60 years old. Can you take the top bunk? I said, sure. So he climbed up the top bunk, and he said, how old is your dad? 60. You know how old I am? He went, I'm 88. Oh, you want to take the bottom bunk? I said, no, it's nice up here. And so he climbed up the top bunk, and there's no ladder or anything. You just got to grab onto this, grab onto that, jump up, and you jump on the top bunk. And so that's what he's doing at the age of 88, 89. So so God will give the strength. There's no trouble for that. What you do is you establish a chapel. I know Bishop Williamson has to travel in and out. And he wants a little bit of peace. He can have a little bit of peace, but don't let him have too much. So you just say that, at least once in a month, at least once in a while, he can come in and say the Mass for you. And we know he has to travel around the world. Right now, he's with Father Giselle in Asia. Right now, he's with Father Giselle in Philippines and in India. He sent me a note saying Nut Giselle is in full form. So, and he is nuts, by the way. It's not, he really is. And so, one day, hopefully, you have to have him come here just so you can just take pictures, write notes, because he is crazy. And, it's very, very interesting seeing a crazy padre. And but in any case, so he's there with Bishop Williamson. They're going around doing the confirmations, visiting the people, giving talks, encouraging our people in the Philippines, and also in Singapore, and in Kuala Lumpur, and in Korea, and in Japan. So he's on a big trip there right now. And so Bishop Williamson isn't here right now. He'll be back very soon. But in any case, that's enough of that. But we need to go through some of the objections to our movement. And, one of them is the May 5th protocol. We have to deal with that. Right here. The May 5th protocol. That Archbishop, we'll just go quickly through it because it won't take long here. That Archbishop Lefebvre signed the May 5th Protocol of 1988, and that Archbishop Lefebvre was in favor of a deal with Rome, and that he had no problems with it. Father Rostand gave me an example. Father Rostand said, remember in 1987, or 1980, when was that quote? In any case, I think it was 87, or possibly 86, when Archbishop Lefebvre met with Cardinal Ratzinger. You know that Cardinal Ratzinger is a common thread throughout all this. Met with Cardinal Ratzinger, and he said, Cardinal, even if you give us our own bishops, even if you give us our own a certain autonomy, we cannot work together because we are working for the Christianization of society and you are working for the de-Christianization of society. You remember that quote. I think it was 86. 86. So Father Rostand, in an argument we had last year at Ordinations, when he was yelling at me, he came to me and he said he just came from screaming at Bishop Tissier. Bishop Tissier preached a scandalous sermon. You should hear the sermon June 15th of last year, the ordination sermon, in Winona. How many of you have heard that sermon? No. You should listen to it. It's still available on the internet. It's a very good sermon. And it's about the fact that we can't have compromise. It's almost as scandalous as Father Hugo's sermon got him expelled on June 17th. You should listen to that sermon also. Father Hugo preached his sermon on Sunday, which caused his being expelled from the society. And he preached it in the tent. First Mass of a new priest, with the superior here and priest there. I was at the sermon. I remember watching the other priests, the superior priests, they were unhappy. But he just preached, and he did not mention anything negative about the SSPX. He only mentioned about the compromise of the Cristeros. And when the Cristeros compromised, they were slain. More died in the compromise than died in the 4 years' war against the enemies of God. And that when he was saying that, I remember watching the faces of those priests at that time. They were very angry, because the same thing is happening to the society, and it will have the same results. And they know it. In their hearts, they know it. But you should listen to both of those sermons, June 17th and June 15th. It's easy to find, and in the sign you shall conquer. Just look at Bishop Tissier, the sermon there, June 15th, and Father Hugo's sermon of June 17th, that got them, Bishop Tissier yelled at by Father Rostand. When he finished yelling at Father Rostand, finished yelling at Bishop Tissier, he came and yelled at me. But he told me, I'm being much nicer to you in our hour or so being yelled at than I was to Bishop Tissier. That's what he told me. I'm being much kinder to you than I was to Bishop Tissier. I told Bishop Tissier he doesn't know the mind of the Archbishop. He knows nothing about the Archbishop. He's against the Archbishop. I said, he wrote the book. Really big, thick book. On Archbishop Lefebvre. And he knew Archbishop Lefebvre before you were born, for heaven's sakes. Now, how do you say he doesn't know the Archbishop? But nonetheless, that's what he said. But he quoted me in 1986, that quote. Didn't you remember Bishop Fellay, Archbishop Lefebvre said, even if you give us our own autonomy, our own bishop, we cannot work together because you're working for the de-Christianization society and I'm working for the Christianization society. And he said, that's what he said in 86. You remember that. Of course I remember that. Well, in 87, he worked for a deal with Rome, with Cardinal Ratzinger. So obviously he didn't really mean what he said in 86. Well, he didn't see that as a contradiction. And then he said, and then in 88, Archbishop Lefebvre signed the May 5th Protocol. He signed the May 5th Protocol, and in that May 5th Protocol, it says, that essentially the same thing. That's what Bishop Fellay is trying to say now. At that time we didn't know about the April 15th Declaration, although he did. I didn't. And so he said that, that was his argument. So that's one of the objections. That Archbishop Lefebvre said, we cannot work together in 86. Then he tried to work with him in 87. He said, we cannot accept anything of the council. But then he accepted the May 5th Protocol. Therefore, Bishop Fellay has the right to do the same thing. That's the argument. Now the answer. Number one, Archbishop Lefebvre did not make a deal with Rome and Cardinal Ratzinger. He did not work together with them. He said no to the deal with Rome. He talked about the possibility of maybe working something out with Rome between the end of 87 and early 88. Because, as Archbishop Lefebvre himself said, it's what they all wanted. The priests, which one was Father Tissier de Malloret, Father Bizic, Father, what's his name in Rome, Anyway, it doesn't matter. A whole bunch of the priests, you can see his face now, I can't see his name. Father Duchalard, and others. They all wanted this deal with Rome. And they said, you have to go with this, you've got to make a attempt of it. And they said, all right, I'll show you, priests. Okay, we'll try it. I'll talk to the Romans. And you can see for yourself how holy and good they are. And I'll deal with the Romans, and let's give them a fair chance. Why not? Guess what? He gave them a fair chance, and he said, if we had gone ahead with this protocol of May the 5th, he said in the June 30th sermon of 1988, it would have been Operation Suicide. That's the reason for the title of the book that Mr. Fox wrote. It would be Operation Suicide. He also said in the June 13th this letter or talk to the future bishops, the 4 bishops elect, had we gone ahead with this, it would have been a cause of disunity and the ripping apart of the Society of St. Pius X. Guess what's happening 25 years later? The same thing. Right? The prophecy is being fulfilled. We see disunity in the SSPX. And then it would be the death of the society. He said, we would not last a year. We would not last a year. And then he said, what kind of seminarians would we get? Suppose, and they say if you get approved by Rome, you're going to get all these vocations. But what kind of vocations? Vocations that want both masses? Do we want vocations of compromise? My uncle was a cop in the Miami Vice. And the Vice Squad against the drugs. And he had his partner for many years. One day, they were out fighting against the bad guys, and there were the drug dealers inside of it. And he was in the forward command post, so to speak, and he was shooting at the bad guys, and they were shooting at him, and a bullet went bang against the wall. He kept shooting, another bang. And he said, wait a minute. The bad guys are over there. And this bullet is coming here. But that's not the bad guy shooting at me. It was his partner. He realized that he realized in the fight it was exactly like Urias. You go forward. Well, they didn't kill him. So next thing you know, bullets are hitting the back of the wall. And he went back. So what are you doing? Oh, it was an accident. I guess we didn't. We were. So wait a minute. They're over there, and I'm over here. How do you accidentally go? How do you do that? So he got into taking care of canine dogs after that. When you've got your own people shooting at you, you're not in unity. And what's happening now in the society, the priests don't trust each other anymore. There is a ripping apart. Even the priests inside of the priory, they don't know where they stand anymore. The ripping apart is there. Now, living in that environment will destroy a normal man. The priests are under great stress. They're questioning themselves. They're questioning the things that they don't even know anymore. I remember my dad. My dad he didn't understand the fear of heights. And I remember when he used to work at the skyscrapers on the top of the buildings. And I remember one time I was working with him. We built all the houses on our property. We built, and we were up on the roof. We were a little higher than that, slightly higher than that, a little bit higher. And walking across the trusses. And I was carrying a 2x10. He says, hurry up! And I was afraid of falling, because I was 12 years old, and I figured the concrete was not good for my health, and I didn't really want to fall. And so I was moving really slow, going, what are you doing? Hurry up! And then he didn't understand that this wasn't, I was scared of that, and we couldn't comprehend it. He said, you just step on the wood, and you're not going to fall. What's the problem? Move. But then, later on, my same dad, he was walking at the Ford plant a few years before he retired on a concrete, beam that was like a yard wide. And he used to walk on little bitty 2x4s. Now he wanted a yard wide and he fell off. And then he didn't get killed, but he got hurt and he fell off. But he couldn't believe that he fell off this wide thing. And then he lost his confidence. Now, things have changed. That's what's happening to society priests right now. They used to walk across the skyscrapers, and no problem. Now they're on a big wide beam. They're like, I don't know. They're losing their confidence. They're in a state of stress. That's the good ones. The wicked ones advance. In this environment, it is designed to destroy priests. I know priests right now that are being worked on by society superiors through the psychological mind games. I'll tell you the name of one of them, since everybody knows. Father Selenov is one. Father Pino is another. Father Selenov and Father Pino. They're destroying them. Playing with their minds. You're going to have a trial, and they're trying to psychologically destroy them. And they have psychologically destroyed other priests. How long can these priests go under that stress? So that's why it's so important for you to establish something here. Then these priests have a place to kind of go, get their strength back, get their confidence back, and go back into the battlefield. But in any case, continuing Father Rostand's objection, the Archbishop of Lefebvre said we cannot work together, but then he was willing to work together in 87. Well, in fact, Archbishop Lefebvre made good on his statement of 86 by his actions in 88. By consecrating the 4 bishops, and by telling those 4 bishops, you keep your mitres and your croziers. When the mitre, you know what the prayer is? When they put the mitre on the head of the bishop, receive the horns of both testaments. They're horns. Receive the horns of both testaments, and with these horns drive away the enemy of the sheep. They're weapons. Same thing with the staff. It's got one side with a hook, which is to pull the sheep out of the pit, and the other side is your whipstaff or claymore or whatever you want to call it. It's for whacking the bad guys. That's what it's for. It's a weapon. The bishop is a soldier who carries weapons, and he is supposed to use them. And Archbishop Lefebvre said, you keep your croziers, you keep your mitres, until such time as Rome converts. When Rome converts, you lay them in front of the Pope to be at his disposal. But until that time, you see a modernist, whack, bang! That's what you do. And so the fact is, until that time, it's wartime. Now, he showed by his actions, he showed by his words, both before 88 and after 88, that he wasn't willing to compromise with the modernists. He also said in 89, which was after 88. See, Father Rostand says, 86, he said, we're not going to work together. But in 88, he was willing to work together. So if it was true that Archbishop Lefebvre changed his doctrine, then you would find, after 88, no contrary statements. That after 88, he would no longer say we can't work together. But what did he say in 89? These people that go to the indult Mass, they are betraying us, they are betraying us, they are betraying us. And these people that say, 1989, these people that say, oh, it's a shame that we can't work together, they must make up their minds. It's a shame that we're not approved. No, it's not. The shame is in the fool that doesn't approve of us. I remember one time I met with the Bishop of Phoenix, Arizona. I met with the bishop, the new bishop, Bishop Stafford. I think he's still the bishop there, but at that time he was the new bishop. And we went to see Bishop Stafford with Father Lee. We went to visit him. And he said, Bishop, what's your problem with us? He said, my problem with you is that you're not approved. I said, oh, okay. Well, all you have to do is approve of us, and you don't have a problem with us anymore, right? And then he said, oh, right. Well, you're not approved by Rome, but and so, well, if that's the only problem, then he's the only one that can fix it. He is the one that does the approval papers, not me. And then I told him, I said, Your Excellency, if I was a bishop, one of the very first things I would do would be to approve of myself. Be on the top priority of list of things to do. But I'm not a bishop, so it's not my problem. I'm not responsible for approving of myself. That's the bishop's problem. I am responsible for taking care of my sheep, for teaching the faith and condemning the errors, and that's what I'm doing. And answering the call of the sheep who have the right to receive these things. Your duty is to approve of it. And if you don't approve of it, you have to answer that before God. That's how it works. This is the old society way and the old society teaching. It has changed now. So in that 86 objection to Father Rostand, we see that in 86 he said we can't work together. In 89 he said we can't work together. In 88 he said we can't work together. He said it many times in 87. And up until he died in 91. We have one aberration, in which for a very brief period of a few months, he tried to work with the Romans. And what did he say in 88? He said, I was disturbed when I was sitting at that table. Father Esposito told me about it last year. Father Esposito was at Ordinations in America last year, but he was also sitting around that table on May 5th, 1988. He was in Albano. He was stationed there at that time. And he remembers the face and the spirit of the Archbishop, how worried and disturbed he was. But then once he removed his name from that protocol, he was calm, he was happy, he was at peace, he could sleep peacefully at night. He knew what to do. He made a decision. Now look at Archbishop Lefebvre. When he had not yet made a decision, and he was debating about what to do, he was disturbed. Because he knew that working with these men is working with the devil. But they have the authority. So I'll try to work with them. But I can't work with them because they will destroy my sheep. When we consider the good of the sheep, it becomes simple. Like reading that consecration of 1984, which Bishop Fellay refused to renew multiple times because it's too controversial. It talks about communism, modernism, the bad guys in the church. We don't want to talk about those negative things anymore. I wanted to have you pull up the consecration of the new consecration, the one of the consecration of the heart of Bishop Fellay that they made last year. It's terrible. Nothing about warfare, nothing about converting souls, nothing about the truth against error. So we have to. It is very clear, and also one of the very important points of that consecration of 84, to save the greatest number of souls. That's Archbishop Lefebvre. To save the greatest number of souls. What's the new teaching from Bishop Fellay? We want quality rather than quantity. You familiar with the working mother? What does a working mother say who has one child and two children? I want quality time. What does quality time mean? It means you're an irresponsible mother who's never at home with your kids. That's what quality time means. Look it up in the dictionary. Quality time. Time spent by an irresponsible mother with her children who doesn't do her job. Quality time. And since you only have quality time with your kids, you feel guilty because you're never with them. So what do you do with that time? You make it terrible time, bad quality time, because you're going to buy the love of your kids. You're going to buy toys for them to prove that you're doing something for them. You've got to not spank them. You've got to not correct them. You've got to baby them and help turn them into little satanic brats. That's quality time. That is not what we need. And now we're talking about quality time with our parishioners. Quality time with the leaders of the flock. Quality time with the elite. Forming an elite. That's not what Archbishop Lefebvre said. Let us save the greatest number of souls. And like my brother says, one of the priests talking about the importance of forming an elite, he says the condition of forming an elite, this is Father Tim, my brother, you got to have people first. Now when you've got people, you can pull out an elite. But if you only have an elite, they're not an elite. They're just a bunch of losers. To have an elite, you have to have a group of people from which you pull the leaders. That's an elite. So unless you're trying to build a flock, you can't have an elite to form. So in fact, to say you're forming an elite is actually an illusion. You're making it impossible to have an elite. The second part of the argument was about the May 5th protocol is the same as the new protocol of 2013. It's not. I don't want to go through the whole thing. We've done long talks on that before. It isn't. Not at all. Number one, the May 5th protocol has 5 points, and the May 13th has 10 points. If you check your math, 5 and 10 are two different numbers. So, they aren't the same. One has 5 points, the other one has 10 points. So right away we can see they're not the same. And then the content isn't the same. And like Father mentioned earlier today, go to point number 4 of 1988. New Mass, we accept the validity of the new Mass, which was promulgated by Paul VI. And then point number 7 of the new one is, the new Mass is valid and legitimately promulgated. That's an essential difference. We've been mentioning recently the example that supposing you are driving your car and you drive over a bum sleeping in the streets. You know, you drive over a bag and there's a bum in it and you killed an innocent guy. Okay, what does that mean? You go to the police officer. The officer, report number 1. I was driving in my car and I drove over a beggar and killed him. Okay. Report number 2. I was driving my car and I intentionally drove over the beggar and killed the guy. What's the difference? One, your insurance rate goes up. The other one, you go to jail. You get the electric chair. There's an essential difference. If you intentionally killed him, it's called murder. If you just drove over him because he's an idiot sleeping in the road, no problem. Go to the funeral if you want to, but it's no big deal. Okay? Just an accident. That changing the word to intentionally makes all the difference in the world. Just like when Archbishop Lefebvre, May 5th Protocol says valid, which was promulgated. The other one says legitimately promulgated. And remember the consequences of legitimately promulgated. Legitimately promulgated means that we are illegitimate. That's the consequence. Because if the new Mass is legitimately promulgated, it is legitimate Mass which fulfills your Sunday obligation and helps you save your soul. Therefore, you're obliged to go to that Mass. And therefore, we have no right to establish our chapels of the society anywhere in the world. We have taken away our whole right of existence. It has consequences. So that's a very serious difference. Also, the May 5th Protocol says that the new one has one of the additions of the new one is that the Vatican II enlightens and deepens the previous teaching. If Cardinal Ratzinger put something like that in front of Archbishop Lefebvre, he would have torn it up and thrown it in his face. But they put it in front of Bishop Fillet, and he said, "Oh, that's really good. I think you're right." And he signed it. Another very important practical difference between the May 5th Protocol, this one here, of 88, and the other one is, Archbishop Lefebvre received this document on the afternoon or the morning of May 5th. He had looked at it over a couple of hours. He had people standing over him saying, "Sign it, sign it, sign it, sign it, sign it." And Cardinal Ratzinger said, "Look, this is your last chance. I'm sorry if it's your last chance." He was under pressure, under duress. So he signed it. Bishop Fillet, however, 7 months and 1 day between the time that he was given the original doctrinal preamble and 7 months and 1 day later, on April the 15th, when he returned to Rome, he had 7 months to have his top theologians look at it. And Father Pfluger spoke about that last year, or a few months ago, in Post Falls, Idaho. He said our top theologians looked at it and they didn't think it was all that bad. What does that mean? Burn him at the stake. That's what that means. We have a roasting. Don't eat the marshmallows. They're toxic. But the fact is, that's what it means. You can't have some top theologians look at something so obviously wrong and they can't figure it out. It means they're idiots. And they shouldn't be your top theologians. We spent the last 50 years facing this. And we look at the consequences of millions and millions of souls leaving the Catholic faith all over the world, and the millions of souls that stay Catholic that don't practice their faith anymore, that don't believe in all the teachings of the Church anymore, that don't believe the Pope is infallible anymore, that don't believe in the teachings of the Church. They believe what's on the BBC. They believe what's on the TV. What do you call it, the telly? Is that what you call it here? What? That's right. Yeah, the telly, whatever. So that's what's happened. That's what's happened. And so, but in any case, so that's a very. There's much more on that. We're not going to go through it. That's sufficient. They're not the same. Now also some other objections that have been brought up are, we don't have a right to do what we're doing, as in Father Giselle, myself, and the other priests, because we don't have the permission from Rome. One of the priests told me a few months ago, he says, look, you can't set up a priory because you're not officially expelled. It was wrong of you to set up a priory. And also, you can't form an organization. Two reasons why you can't form an organization. One is because you're not approved. And that's the argument. In fact, Bishop Williamson gave that essential argument this last weekend in the latest on comments. He says that the Archbishop Lefebvre got the approval for the founding society in 1970 by Monsignor Charrière, Bishop Charrière. And that he considered it very important that had it not been approved by Bishop Charrière, it could have been considered his own personal apostolate and not the apostolate of the Church. And so Archbishop Lefebvre considered it a very great thing and a very important thing and an essential thing to receive the approval from the local bishop when he got started. And unfortunately, in our present time, 2013, we can't get any initial approval from local bishops. So therefore, we're going to have to endure. That's the essential argument. Now, the answer is, Archbishop Lefebvre started his seminary. First go to Archbishop Lefebvre. He began the seminary year in 1969. 1969. If you look at a calendar, you will discover that 69 was it before 1970. Now, he started the seminary in 1969. Which, even if you look at math, 1,969 is a number less than 1,970. So both ways it's a lower number. He started the seminary in 1969. There were 10 seminarians. During the course of the year, he wrote up the statutes and he tried to get them approved. On November the 1st, 1970, in the second school year of the Society of the Alliance of Ten, Bishop Charrière gave his approval of that society. So the question is this. Had Bishop Charrière not given his approval, would Archbishop Lefebvre have closed the seminary? That's a question. We can't know for sure the answer because, we know only what happened. But we can guess what the answer would be. And the answer is no, he would not have closed the seminary. Because he'd already had it up and running. He was already getting vocations from around the world. And in that first school year in which they were in Freiburg, he saw firsthand how bad the modern seminary is. Because remember, in that first school year, the seminarians studied with other seminarians. They studied in the same classroom with non-pastoral seminarians. Father Post, who was the oldest priest of society, and was an American. I was stationed with him for a while. It was in 1972. And I asked him, what is the main principle of the SSPX? And he says, the main principle of the SSPX is, if it feels good, do it. But Father Post, he's a good priest. He's a bit nervous. He was ordained in 72. He's the oldest priest in society now. The two that were ordained before him are gone, but he's the oldest society priest now. And he was there at the seminary. Those seminarians were mocked and cursed by the other seminarians because they were wearing cassocks. The other seminarians weren't wearing cassocks. And then the teaching, some professors were teaching the faith, other professors were teaching modernism and heresy. And he saw, here's my seminarians, the other seminarians, he saw how bad the seminary was. It was not a rumor what Bishop Tissier and what Father Olonier told them about how bad the seminaries were, that there weren't seminaries where they could learn the Catholic faith. So then they went to found another place. They moved into the building that was purchased by the businessmen over in Icone. Would he have closed the seminary if they hadn't gotten the approval? I think that the answer is no. I don't think he would have closed the seminary. But getting the approval was a very great benefit. It was a great benefit to receive that approval because he got the approval from the church, and he probably got it only at that time. Like I said, Bishop Charrière was getting ready to retire. He was friends with the Archbishop, and it was a tentative approval for 5 years and then to be reapproved later on. He never got the reapproval. Instead, there was a suspension in 1976. We know by what he did in 76 that he didn't quit. In 75 and 76, the suspension is said, which one was first? What did he do? 75?
75, the society was suppressed.
Oh, that's right. It was suppressed. And the 76 was the what do you call it, the suspension. That's right. So 75, when the society was suppressed, he kept the seminary going. So history tells us what we know of the Archbishop. When he was told that you cannot continue as a society in 1975, he did continue, and he was suppressed. When he was told that if you consecrate 4 bishops, you will be excommunicated, he consecrated 4 bishops anyway. And in 1970, he got approved. Would he have done the continuation of the work of the seminary without the approval? And I would argue, based on his previous and post-history, from before 1970, when he was fighting the Council's liberalism, and after 1970, when he was fighting the Council's liberalism, he would have continued as he did. And so I think the argument is weak. Secondly, we consider what happened after 1970. We've got more arguments which Lefebvre would have continued, because he encouraged Don Gerard to start a Benedictine monastery in France. Don Gerard did not have permission to do so. In 1988, Father Thomas Aquinas, he told me just in January of this year, Father Thomas Aquinas in Brazil, in 1988, Father Thomas Aquinas was in the monastery in Brazil, and Don Gerard went over to modernism. A couple of the monks wanted to also go with modernism in Brazil, but Father Thomas Aquinas was the superior, and some of the monks were with him. And he said, what should I do? Some monks said, just leave the monastery and go build another one. So he wrote to Archbishop Lefebvre, what should I do? I came here in 86, we started this monastery, now in 88 we've got to make a decision. Are we going to go with modernist Rome like Don Gerard over in France, or are we going to stay with tradition? I'm not going with modernist Rome, period. So I'm only asking this, should I fight it out in the monastery and preserve the Brazilian monastery for Catholic tradition, or should I leave the monastery and start all over again? And Archbishop Lefebvre wrote a letter back to Father Thomas Aquinas, you fight it out. And you don't submit. We also have the Franciscans, the Capuchins, the Dominicans. All started without permission. What did they do? Archbishop Lefebvre, will you allow us to begin? He could not give them authority to begin because he's an auxiliary bishop, retired, who has no authority in the church. No authority. He's got the same authority that any of us have, which is none. But he said, you do the work of tradition. Father Michael Sim, up in the north. He went to Archbishop Lefebvre. What should I do? And he said, you restart the Redemptorists. And that's what he did. Now, we could list at least 20 different congregations, a lot of them congregations of women, like the Carmelites, the SSPX sisters, and so on. And many, many others. The Dominicans in Fonjo, the Dominicans in New Zealand, who all started their orders without the permission of Rome or a local bishop. Now, what did they do? They're doing what we're going to do. When Mother Michaela started the Dominicans again in Ranganui, she did not follow the rule of the Fonjo sisters. Why? Because Mother Michaela was a Dominican of the order of Dominicans founded by St. Dominic. They have a different rule. They say the full divine office, for instance. The Fonjo sisters do not. Fonjo sisters were founded in the 1800s. Mother Michaela's Dominicans were founded in 1200 by St. Dominic. And they have a different rule. They have the same color habit, but they have a different rule. Why do they have a different rule? Because every few hundred years the Pope gets mad at all the orders of nuns. Because they say there's 3 things the Holy Ghost doesn't know. Number 1, the Holy Ghost doesn't know what a Jesuit is going to say. And number 2, the Holy Ghost doesn't know what a Dominican has said. And number 3, the Holy Ghost doesn't know how many orders of sisters there are in the church. They say it's one of the 3 things the Holy Ghost doesn't know. So there's so many orders of nuns in the church that every now and then the Pope gets mad. He said, that's it. Any order that's under 10 years old, under 50 years old, you have to solidify together and become part of a major order. Well, there was an order of the left ventricle down in Fonjo, France, and they affiliated themselves with the Dominicans. But they put on a Dominican habit, but they never took on the Dominican rule. This has happened many times. So as a result, there are actually two different orders. What did the Dominicans do with Mother Michaela? She didn't become a Dominican like the ones in Fonjo, because she wasn't one of those. She became a Dominican like she was trained to be, and followed the Dominican rule that she was trained to follow. So this is what we're doing in Society of St. Pius X. I am a priest of the Society of St. Pius X. Father Hugo is a priest of the Society of St. Pius X. Father Giselle is a priest of the Society of St. Pius X. We will live the statutes of the Society of St. Pius X. We will follow the spirit of our fathers that went before us. We will live according to our rules and continue to work. And if it's not approved, that is something that bodes very badly with those who do not approve. It isn't our problem. We have to do the work that we're doing. Like Father Giselle says, we must do the work that we're doing. Souls are calling for the true faith. Souls are calling for the sacraments. And to say that they're crazy but they have the authority is foolish. Of course they have the authority. But when the authority tells me that abortion is legal, I tell the authority, you're excommunicated. And I tell the authority, that's not a law. And I tell the authority, that's wrong. Like, the great example, if you know the movie Beckett, with, what's his name, Richard Burton, One good scene in there was Beckett comes out, St. He comes out with his mitre, his crozier, and he goes, I'm going to impale you, one of the soldiers says, I'm going to kill you. He says, don't you? He said, put up thy sword before you impale your soul on it. He wasn't scared to die, he was happy to die. But he judged the judges, because he's the bishop. He judged the judges, just like Christ judged the judges on Good Friday morning. And we, as the followers of Christ, judge judges. It happened in the lives of the saints. 3 young men who are going to be thrown in a fiery furnace. In the book of Daniel. What do they say? O King, you may throw us in the fire today, but don't think you're going to escape the fire. They told the king who was up and who was down. They commanded the king. The king wasn't very happy. So he had the fire stoked 7 times hotter. But they immediately stood up to the king and they judged the king. The boy Daniel judged the judges. Imagine if Daniel would have thought, oh, well, they have the authority. I mean, they're the judges. Not only the judges, but they're the witnesses. I'm truly sorry about Susanna. I'm so terrible about Susanna. Don't you think it was awful what happened to Susanna? Oh, I think it's terrible. What did Daniel do? At the age of 12, he stood up on a rock and he said, you children of Israel, you are taking innocent blood. Imagine the power of the boy Daniel. 12-year-old boy who nobody knows from Adam, not related to anybody, stands on a rock and says, I'm innocent of the blood of this woman. And then they said, what are we going to do? Put them aside and I will judge them. Daniel judged the judges. We are in that time again. Acts chapter 5. We obey God rather than men. This is the time that we are in. There is a time when you just listen to the general. And there is a time when you say, General, forget it. The general is going to betray the army. The general is working for the enemy. You don't obey the general. And if you do, you're guilty. And you get hung by the neck until dead, just like everybody else. So that's the answer. We do have a right to do what we're doing. And not only do we have a right to do what we're doing, we have an obligation to do what we're doing. And so, when people call for us to go around the world, we go around the world. That's what we were trained to do. And think about it, it compares to the Roman times. They say, remember, at the end of the Roman times, the Visigoths and the Goths are attacking the Romans. But you know, the battlefield was very confusing because the Visigoths were dressed in Roman shields, Roman uniforms, and they were taught Roman tactics and using Roman swords, fighting against the Romans with Roman shields, Roman tactics, Roman uniforms. It was a confusing battlefield because the Romans trained them. They trained them how to fight like Romans and beat everybody up. And then they turned against them. You can't do that, that's cheating. But they did. I was trained as a society priest. What was I trained? I was trained how to disobey bishops. We go to disobedience classes when I was in the seminary. Now they go to obedience classes. We went to disobedience classes. We went to classes that said, you've got to learn how to go out and find the maximum number of bishops that you can disobey. You go out to every diocese you can think of, and you go and find the bishop, and you disobey him. And you found one you can't disobey. How do I get over there and disobey him too? I said, well, we'll figure something out. So we're going to go over and we're going to find a way to disobey every bishop we can, because we are in the business of spreading the kingship of Christ everywhere in the world, which these bishops are in the business of destroying. That's why it says, notice in the consecration of Our Lady that I read this morning, written by Archbishop Lefebvre, it's nothing about our Society of St. Pius X. We're consecrating our Society of St. Pius X, but what's it about? Consecrating the Society of St. Pius X to our Holy Mother Mary in order to conquer the world for Christ. We aren't just taking care of ourselves, and we're not just trying to find enough people so we can support ourselves and feel good about ourselves. We're in the business of converting the souls all over the world for Christ. That's what we're doing. And it's a battle of faith. It's not a battle of canon law. It's a battle of faith. So we have to fight that battle of faith. We have to do what we're doing. And so we had a meeting in August in 2010, or last year, 2012. There was an election of superior. I was elected to superior. Then we had a priest together. We started traveling around the world. We've already had, I remember I was elected superior at, I think, at 8 p.m. at night, 6 p.m. at night. Everybody quit by the next morning. We had big fights, big fight. And finally, I quit. So it was glorious for a couple of hours. But we keep going. It's like Father Giselle says, yes, we're in the fight together. But we have a hierarchy, we have a structure, but we're also, we're tough guys. We were trained in disobedience, so we're rough to deal with. And so it's not easy to work with us. It's not easy to work together. We're in a battlefield. I was speaking with Father Cardozo down in South America, who's doing wonders there. He's a real apostolic priest. As an example, he went to Ipatinga, I think is the place. Ipatinga in Brazil. And he said the first Latin Mass there in June of 2012. Now they have 40 faithful. They never had Mass before June 2012. All the ladies are wearing dresses. Good for you ladies wearing that. All the ladies are wearing dresses. 2 marriages. 3 young men want to become priests. 3 young men approached me about entering the seminary to become priests. They're building a church. More people are coming to Mass. And they are vibrant. Absolutely vibrant. And he teaches, their first Latin Mass was in June of 2012. Only made possible because of the expulsion of Father Cardozo. You know that, I'll just mention it here, try not to mention too many details, but Lithuania, Albania. Father de Moreau did more than 1,000 baptisms in Albania. There were too many converts. The mission was closed. We don't go there anymore. Father Yakman in Lithuania, building up souls and souls and souls. Shut down. I was in Asia. We experienced the same kind of thing. We build up an apostolate and they cut it down. And I think what's happening also, we must recognize we're not dealing with an isolated case of a bishop who decided to become a modernist in one document on one bad day because he didn't take his medication. We are dealing with an ongoing wickedness. Even though we fight primarily on the realm of doctrine, we are facing the fact that we are not only dealing with someone who has good intentions and made a mistake. It's confusing times. Some of you may be saying to be conscious, you're wrong if you are. But it's understandable. I have to admit, to accept Pope Francis as the Pope is embarrassing. But the fact is, he's the Pope. He's the Pope. But the thing is that it's understandable if some people don't believe that. It's also understandable if some people are confused this way and that. It's understandable because we're in a time of crisis. But there's one thing to make a mistake in judgment because you don't understand everything correctly, which anyone can make. And there's another thing to do acts of wickedness, destroying the good of souls over a period of years, and then make a doctrinal mistake. Two different levels of wickedness, problems. We are dealing in the SSPX not only with the change of doctrine, which is the reason why we're standing up, but there have been many, many acts of crushing souls over the years. There have been many, many acts of stopping the growth and stopping the conversion and killing vocations and driving people away from vocations. Smashing souls on a massive scale. There are priests and faithful that have witnessed this everywhere in the world. We are also facing this problem. Our battle is a battle about the salvation of souls. And souls are being attacked and they are being harmed. And it's getting late here. But I wanted to, like I say, those are just a couple of objections, but we have to fight that as well. And that the priests are weakened, the people are weakened. There's been many struggles and many wounds over this battle. We cannot have the objective of simply keeping the faith ourselves. Our objective as Catholics is to make the whole world Catholic. It's not our objective as Catholics to stay Catholic. Our Father Hannafin used to say, I'm an old Irish pastor, he says, don't keep the faith, spread it. He used to always get mad and say that. Don't be keeping the faith. I don't want to hear about you keeping the faith. You must spread it. He used to say that all the time, the old Irish priest, my old pastor. But in any case, we have to spread the faith. And also, I wanted to close there. Now, we're going to have some general, because it's already almost time. We're going to pack it in very soon here. We're going to have a general question period, but I know we've gone over a lot of questions anyway. And that was what we're going to do here at the end, was a general question period for any of us, Father Hugo, myself, Father Kramer. So maybe we've covered a lot of that, but if anybody has any questions, then we bring it up, because I think we should probably be...
Yeah. We have a 10-minute break and then do the questions.
Okay, we'll have a little 10-minute break, and then we'll just do the questions, and then we'll pack it in. Okay? Yeah. So let's say a prayer. Let's say a prayer. Lord, Father, and Son, and Holy